Hello and welcome to Nullitaire Gaming, where we play games with 0 players. That is to say, we play bots against one another. In this series we're playing Root with the Clockwork expansion. We're putting all the Clockwork bots up against each other and see who wins. This is the 4th video in the series. If you haven't seen the first 3 videos, I recommend those first. In the first video of the series I go through each of the bots and talk about the various ambiguities that need to be resolved in order to play those bots efficiently and effectively, and the various interpretations that I'm going to use throughout this series. And in the second 2 videos we play the first, I think 3 rounds. So we're going to continue on with the game. Let's see what happens. Okay, this is the state of the board right now. We can see that Vagabot is way ahead with 14 victory points. And all the other factions are pretty much right around 5 or so victory points. So the question is, can the Vagabot actually be stopped, or is the Vagabot going to run away with the rest of the game? I suppose the next turn will probably tell the tale. If the Vagabot isn't slowed down at least by one or more of these factions, then it's probably pretty much going to be a clear win for the Vagabot. Okay, so let's see what happens. Mechanical Marquise is up first. The Marquise is up first, and the order card is Fox, and it does have an available craftable item. So the Marquise will pick up an item and score 1 victory point. Next up is Battle. So the Marquise is going to battle in every Fox clearing. The only Fox clearing where the Marquise can battle is clearing 8. So the Marquise will battle the Eyrie in clearing 8. The roll is a 3-2. And of course the Marquise can only do 1 because they only have 1 warrior there. And the Eyrie can only do 1 because of their 1 warrior. In any case, those 2 warriors are both removed. Next up is Recruit. So the Marquise will recruit 4 warriors in Fox clearings that they rule. It turns out that the Marquise only rules 1 Fox clearing, so all 4 of their warriors went into clearing 6. Build is next, so they're going to put a building in the clearing they rule with the most Marquise warriors, and the building will be Sawmill because it's a Fox order card. Well, clearing 5 and clearing 6 are tied with 5 warriors each, but obviously clearing 5 doesn't have any room for another building, so this building will go into clearing 6. Next up is Move. So they're going to move all but 3 of their warriors from each ordered clearing to the adjacent clearing with the most enemy pieces. Of course, clearing 6 is the only clearing, the only Fox clearing, that has any Marquise warriors. So they're going to move all but 3 of those warriors to the adjacent clearing with the most enemy pieces. Well, clearing 2 doesn't have any enemies. Clearing 11 has 3 enemy pieces. And clearing 3 has 2. So they're clearly going to move to clearing 11. Okay. After movement, the Marquise does Blitz. So they find the clearing they rule of highest priority with no enemy pieces, and they move all but 1 warrior from there. Well, as usual, the clearing they rule of highest priority with no enemy pieces is clearing 2. So they're going to move all but 1 warrior out of there. And they want to go to the adjacent clearing with the most enemy pieces. But all of the adjacent clearings only have Marquise pieces in them. So they'll simply go to the highest priority, which will be 5. So they'll add those 2 to clearing 5. Because there are no enemy pieces in that clearing, they won't battle. Okay, up next would be Expand, but the Marquise did place a building this turn, so that won't do anything. So we move on to Evening. They will score victory points on the Fox track, which will be 1. So they are now at 8 victory points. And that's the end of the Marquise's turn. The Automated Alliance is up next, And so they reveal their order card, which in this case is a rabbit card. It does not have a craftable item, so that does nothing. So on to Revolt. Well, they do have their rabbit base still on their board, so they really would like to do a rabbit revolt this turn. However, they don't have any sympathy in any rabbit clearings. The only sympathy on the board is in clearing 1, which is fox, in clearing 9, which is mouse, and in clearing 11, which is mouse. So they can't actually do the revolt. So they move on to public pity, and so they'll spread sympathy twice since they have 4 or fewer sympathy tokens on the map. So they want to place their sympathy token in the clearing that's a rabbit clearing, and that's adjacent to a sympathetic clearing, and that has the fewest enemy warriors. Okay, so clearing 3 has the fewest enemy warriors of the rabbit clearings that are adjacent to sympathetic clearing. So the first sympathy token goes into clearing 3, and they score 1 victory point for that. That brings them to 5. For the next sympathy token, again, they want to put it in a rabbit clearing that's adjacent to sympathy and has the fewest enemy pieces. Well, the other rabbit clearings are 5, 10, and 4. And they're all adjacent to sympathetic clearings because 1 and 9 are both sympathetic. So it'll be the clearing that has the fewest pieces among those. So 4 has 5 pieces. 10 has 4 pieces, and 5 has, 7 pieces. Okay, so it's going to be 10. They'll put their sympathy token there, and they score 1 point for that, which brings them to 6. Next is Daylight, where they will spread sympathy once more. So it'll be in one of those other rabbit clearings, either 5 or 4. And clearly 4 has the fewest enemy pieces, so they'll put their sympathy token in there. They only score 1 victory point for that because there are 3 or more of a single faction's pieces there. So this should score 1 victory point for that. But I realized also that I forgot to do that when they put the sympathy token in clearing 10, because there's also 3 or more enemy pieces there. So they shouldn't have scored any points for that, and they should score only 1 point for this, so they're right where they should be, 6 points. Okay, spread sympathy is done. Surprise revolt is next, but this is not a bird order card, so nothing happens there. They move on to evening, organize. If they have any bases with 3 or more warriors, they would spread sympathy and remove those warriors, but they don't. Their 2 bases have fewer than 3 warriors each. Okay, so next is revolt. Recruit, not revolt. So they will place 1 warrior at each base. So clearing 1 and clearing 11 both get an additional warrior. We have to remember before we end the Automated Alliance's turn that Wildfire comes into play, so they'll spread sympathy 1 more time, but they won't gain any victory points for it. And that means that the final rabbit clearing does get a sympathy token after all. Okay, that's the end of the Alliance's turn. The Vagabond is up next. The order card is a rabbit. It does have an item on it, but that item is sold out, not available. The Marquise took the last one. So Vagabond will not craft an item. Okay, Slip is next. If you have 2 or fewer undamaged items, well, Vagabond has plenty of undamaged items. So Vagabond will not slip into a forest. Okay, so it's Daylight. We're going to take Daylight actions using the rabbit track. So Battle is first. Because of Berserker, Vagabond targets the faction with the most pieces rather than the highest victory points. So we'll simply battle the Eyrie
in clearing 7. And because of marksman, the first thing that'll happen is that Vagabot will simply take away one of the Ivory Warriors and score a victory point. Okay, now Vagabot will roll for the battle. The roll is a 2-2. The Vagabot can do 2 hits because they have an item up on the battle track, so they can do a maximum of 2 hits. But the Ivory can only do 1 because there's only 1 warrior there. Okay, so that removes the Ivory Warrior, which gives the Vagabot another victory point. But the Vagabot has to damage 1 item. So the item they just exhausted for the battle will be damaged. Okay, that's battle. Because of Adventurer, Vagabot doesn't battle more than once. So they'll move on. Vagabot will move on to Repair. So Repair says if there are any damaged items, exhaust 1 to repair 1. So that's what Vagabot will do. Exhaust 1 and repair 1. Okay. And that brings back Vagabot back to 6 items, by the way. So that item should have come off the battle track, but then when that item was damaged in battle, but it goes right back after this repair. So we're good. Next on Daylight Actions is Special, which means exhaust an item to take the action on the character card. Okay. Which is steal, of course. Take a card from an enemy in your clearing with the most points there, then most pieces there. Problem is that Vagabot just took out everybody in that clearing, so there's nobody there to steal from. So Special is not going to happen this turn. That's the end of Daylight for the Vagabot. So now Vagabot will do Quest as many times as possible. Vagabot has 3 items. 3 unexhausted items. And the quest card is Rabbit. So Vagabot will move to the nearest rabbit clearing, which is over here, 3. Exhausting 1 item to do that. And then complete the quest by exhausting the other 2 items. So Vagabot gets a victory point for that. And the new quest card is also a rabbit. Okay, we move on to Evening for Vagabot. If you have any damaged items, refresh 4 on damaged items. So Vagabot does have some damaged items, so we'll refresh 4 on damaged items. Next, if you're in a forest, repair all items. Obviously Vagabot is not in a forest, so we'll repair only 1 item. But of course we have to remember Berserker. Berserker allows Vagabot to repair an extra one. So Vagabot repairs 2 items. Here we go. The Irie are up next. The order card is a mouse. And it does have an item on it, but that item is not craftable because all the swords are gone. Okay, so the mouse card will go into the Decree. And we'll go to Daylight. So Recruit is first in resolving the Decree. Starting with the Fox column. They'll want to recruit 1 warrior in the Fox clearing that has a roost. There are 2 Fox clearings with a roost, clearing 12 and clearing 8. So they prioritize whichever one has the fewest, first whichever one has the most enemy pieces, and they're tied in that regard. Then they go for whichever one has the fewest Ivory Warriors. So they'll recruit in clearing 8. The mouse column is next for recruit, and that's not good for the Ivory because there are no mouse clearings with roosts. The only roosts on the board are in clearing 12, clearing 8, and clearing 4. So that means, because nobility is in play, ability says, you fall into turmoil if you cannot place a roost or a warrior. So here's a case where the Eyrie cannot place a warrior using recruit, so they fall into turmoil. So normally turmoil goes like this. First, humiliate, lose 1 victory point per bird card in the decree. However, with nobility in play, things are different. Whenever you fall into turmoil, you do not lose victory points. Instead, you score 1 victory point per bird card in the decree. So, the Eyrie are going to score 4 victory points here. That moves the Eyrie up to 9 victory points. The next part of turmoil is we purge, that is, we discard the decree except for the viziers. So the decree is reset, more or less. And the next part of turmoil says, go to evening. Okay, so the rest of daylight is just skipped. That means, by the way, that we don't do, the Eyrie doesn't do relentless or swoop. Relentless says after resolving the decree. There is no resolving the decree this time because we're jumping right to evening. And swoop says at the end of daylight. Well, we're skipping all of daylight now and going straight to evening. So my reading of this is we don't do either relentless or swoop in this case. And I think that reading makes sense, that these two things wouldn't happen if the Eyrie are sent into turmoil, right? I mean, if they're in turmoil, how can they be doing these kinds of actions? Out there putting warriors on the map and taking out undefended pieces. So I think that's a consistent reading here, that these things don't happen during turmoil. All right, we go right to evening, which means that the Eyrie score 1 victory point for the number of roosts they have on the board, so they score 2 victory points, and that's the end of their turn. So here's where the score stands after this round. The Vagabond's still in the lead with 17. The Eyrie jumped up to 11. The Marquise is at 8, and the Automated Alliance is trailing with 6. On to the next round. The Marquise is up next, and the order card is a bird card. There is no craftable item, however. But it is a bird card, so that means the Marquise is going to do extended daylight this time. So the Marquise will start with battle in every clearing. So when I do this, I like to just go in priority order. So I'll just go through the clearings one at a time until I find a clearing where the Marquise can actually battle. So it can't battle in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Okay, 5. There is an enemy in 5. So the first battle will be in clearing 5. And of course we know how this battle is going to go. No matter what the roll is, the result will be that the defenseless sympathy token is removed and the cats lose one warrior. And of course, because of popularity, the Marquise does not get a victory point for removing that sympathy token. Okay, so that's clearing 5. Next, clearing 6. No, there's nobody to battle there. Clearing 7 is completely empty. Clearing 8, there's no Marquise there. Okay, clearing 9. Once again, it's a defenseless sympathy token, so the same result. The Marquise loses 1 cat, and the sympathy token is removed. But the Marquise doesn't get any victory points for removing the sympathy token. And moving on now to 10. Again, defenseless sympathy token, so same thing. Lose 1 cat, lose the sympathy token. And then 11, well, this is going to be a little more in-depth. So the roll is a 3-1. And remember that because Veterans is in play, the Alliance gets the higher roll. Okay. So they can, but they can't do 2 damage because of the
number of warriors they have is only 2, so that goes down to 2. The Marquis can do 1, they have enough warriors for that. But also remember that the Automated Alliance has Automated Ambush, so they do an extra hit automatically. Okay, so this actually comes back up to 3, really. Alright, in any case, 2 cats are lost and 1 of the Alliance warriors. The last clearing is 12, and there are no cats there. So that ends battle. Next up in Escalated Daylight is Recruit, which says put 2 warriors each in the 2 clearings you rule of lowest priority. But Iron Will is in play, which says whenever you recruit in Escalated Daylight, place double the warriors. Now, something I mentioned in the first video in this series is that Iron Will is ambiguous. We know we're placing double the warriors, which would be 8 total warriors, because Recruit in Escalated Daylight says 2 warriors each in the 2 clearings you rule of lowest priority. So it's going to be 8. But is it 4 in 2 clearings, or is it 2 each in 4 clearings? That's not really specified. My reading is just to double it, double the first number. So recruit 4 warriors each in the 2 clearings you rule, instead of doubling the second number, which would be recruit 2 warriors each in the 4 clearings you rule. It's ambiguous, but I tend to think the first reading is probably the intended one. So we're going to put 4 warriors each in the 2 clearings the Marquis rules of lowest priority. So the 2 clearings of lowest priority ruled by the Marquis turned out to be clearing 2, so 4 new warriors went there, and clearing 5, which has quite an army of cats at this point. Okay, so that ends Recruit. Build is up next. So the Marquis will build a building of the type with the most pieces on the map. Well, they're all tied. So we have to go to the tiebreaker on that. And the tiebreaker is sawmills first. Alright, so they're going to place a sawmill at the clearing with the most Marquis warriors. Well, 5 clearly has the most Marquis warriors, but there's no room for a building there. In second place would be clearing 2, but there's no room for a building there either. So next is clearing 6, which has 3 Marquis warriors and room for a building. So the sawmill will go there. Next is move, but this is really move and battle. So the Marquis is going to move all but 3 warriors from each clearing to the adjacent clearing with the most enemy pieces, and then battle there. Okay, so this has nothing to do with the order card. They're just going to move all over the map and battle wherever they can. Because of this rule, I like to do things in order of priority of the clearings. Okay, so action order says if a bot would take multiple actions with different targets that might produce different results, then take those actions in priority order from highest to lowest. Okay, and when moving, use the origin clearing priority. Okay, so I already kind of did that when I did battle. You know, I went in priority order. But it didn't matter that much with battle, because you're eventually going to get to everything and battle in that space. But with moving, it does matter. Because if you look at clearing 2, okay, if the Marquis moves out of clearing 2 first into one of the adjacent clearings, it's just going to add to its battle force in those clearings. And then when it moves from that clearing, it'll have more warriors to move. Okay, see what I mean? So, you know, if the Marquis didn't move from 2 until, say, the end, say that was the last clearing, then all that would happen is the cats just move into one of these clearings and don't have a chance to battle there. But if those cats move first, if they're the first clearing to move, well, then those warriors might add to, say, the force in clearing 5, and then those might move into, say, clearing 1 and battle the alliance over there, let's say. Okay, so going in priority order actually does make a big difference with movement. All right, so we're going to go in priority order, and that means 2 is up first. So they're going to move all but 3 warriors
So that's 2 warriors are going to move out of there. And they're going to move to the clearing with the most enemy pieces. Well, none of the clearings adjacent have any enemy pieces, so they'll simply go to the highest priority, which would be 5. Okay. 5 is the next clearing in priority order. And yeah, there is a clearing adjacent with enemy pieces, so the cats are going to move all but 3 of their warriors over into clearing 1, and then they're going to battle there. The roll is a 3-1. Of course, the Alliance gets the higher roll because Veterans is in play. And they can do 3 hits. They have 3 warriors there. The Marquise can do 1 hit. They got plenty of warriors to cover that. And remember that the Automated Alliance does an extra hit because of Automated Ambush. So the cats actually lose 4 here in this battle. And the Alliance loses 1. I do want to point out that Hospitals is in play, but this only comes into effect when the Marquise is defending in battle. So even though the Marquise lost 4 warriors there, they don't come back at the keep because the Marquise was attacking there and not defending. Okay, we were on clearing 5, so we continue on to clearing 6, which has 3 warriors, so they can't move all but 3 out of there. So they won't move from 6, or 7, or 8, or 9, or 10, or 11, or 12. Okay, so that's the end of movement for the Marquise. So Blitz is next because the Marquise just finished with movement. So we find the clearing that the Marquise rules of highest priority with no enemy pieces and move all but 1 warrior. Okay, so as usual, that turns out to be clearing 2. The Marquise does rule clearing 1 now, but there are enemy pieces there, so that doesn't count. So it's still clearing 2. So the Marquise moves all but 1 warrior out of clearing 2. And they want to find the adjacent clearing with enemy pieces, but that's not the case. So they'll go with lowest priority, which is, again is 5. Okay, so that's the end of Blitz. Because daylight actions are done now, we move on to evening. And they will score on the highest track here, which will be the Fox track. And they'll gain 2 victory points. So the Marquise is up to 10. And that's the end of their turn. Automated Alliance is next. And they also get a bird card. And this one does have a craftable item. So they will take that and score a victory point. Brings them up to 7. Revolt is next, but because the order card is a bird, that will happen during daylight instead with Surprise Revolt. So we move on to Public Pity. And since the Automated Alliance did not revolt this turn, they're going to spread sympathy twice because they have 4 or fewer sympathy tokens on the map. Because the order card is a bird, the suit of the clearing doesn't matter. And so they're just looking for the clearing that's adjacent to sympathy with the fewest pieces. So there's a sympathy token over there in 3, and 7 obviously has no pieces at all, so that's where their sympathy token is going to go. And they'll score 1 victory point for that. The second sympathy token will go in clearing 9, which is adjacent to a sympathetic clearing. And they will score 2 victory points for that, bringing them up to 10. In daylight actions now, they spread sympathy once more. Clearing 8 now is the clearing with the fewest enemy pieces. That's not sympathetic, but is adjacent to sympathy. So they will place that token there, and they will take 2 victory points for that, leapfrogging over the Marquise and the Eyrie. The Surprise Revolt is next. And here on their faction board it just says to revolt in such a clearing of any suit. And if you read revolt over here, it says remove all enemy pieces from the ordered sympathetic clearing with the most enemy pieces and place the ordered base there. To revolt, the ordered base must be on this board. But it doesn't really say, if you think about it, whether or not the base actually has to match the clearing, right? Because surprise revolt just says, revolt in such a clearing of any suit. Okay, well the question is, could I just place that bunny base in, say, a fox clearing? You know? As far as what it says on the faction board, I don't see why not. However, in the law of robotics, I went there to look up what it actually says for surprise revolt, and it makes it clear. If the order card is a bird card, remove all enemy pieces from the sympathetic clearing with the most enemy pieces matching a base on your faction board. Then place the matching base there. Okay, so it does have to match some base that's on the board. All right, so it has to be a bunny clearing, which, that seems like the right answer. I wasn't really thinking that it was a good idea to do it another way, but I try to go as literally as possible from what it says on the boards, and as far as I could tell, it was open to interpretation. Okay, but the law of robotics makes it clear. All right, so let's look at the bunny clearings. Well, there's no sympathy in 5 or 10, so it can't be one of those two. We have clearing 4 down here, which does have sympathy, and there are 5 enemy pieces there. And we've got clearing 3 over here, the last rabbit clearing, which has 3 enemy pieces. Okay, well then it's clear 4 is going to get the revolt treatment. All of those ivory pieces are going to be removed. Because the Alliance removed a roost, they get a victory point. Okay, that's the end of the surprise revolt. We move on to evening and organize. In each clearing with a base and 3 or more Alliance warriors, remove all Alliance warriors and spread sympathy. Well, none of the bases have 3 or more warriors, so nothing happens there. Next is recruit. Simply place a warrior at each base. Before we end the Alliance turn, of course, we must do wildfire, which means they'll spread sympathy one more time, but don't score any victory points for it. Both clearing 10 and 12 are tied for having the fewest warriors each, so they will go with the highest priority, which is 10. The Vagabond is up next. Its order card is Fox, and there is a craftable item. So the Vagabond will take that and add it to its satchel and gain 1 victory point. Because the Vagabond now has 9 items, another exhausted item will go up to the battle track. The order card is a Fox, so in daylight the Vagabond will start with Explore. So Vagabond is currently in clearing 3. The nearest ruin is 1, 2, 3 clearings away, up there in clearing 10. In fact, it's the only ruin left on the board, so that's the place where Vagabond's got to go. So it's going to take 3 items to move there. So Vagabond ended up exhausting 4 items in total, 3 to move to clearing 10 and then another to explore the ruin, but picked up an item in the process, of course. So Vagabond has 2 unexhausted items left. And we move on to battle. Because of Berserker, Vagabond always targets the faction with the most pieces in the clearing. So he's going to target the Marquise in clearing 10. And because of Marksman, Vagabond does an immediate hit. So before the dice are even rolled, 1 cat warrior is removed and Vagabond gains 1 victory point for that. The roll is a 3-2. Now Vagabond can do 3 hits because there are 2 items on the battle track, so max hits are 3 right now. And the Marquise can't do 2 because there's only one Marquise warrior there. So that goes down to 1. Okay, so that means that the Vagabond does 3 damage. It takes 2 damage to remove a building because Fortified is in play. So every building takes 2 hits to remove. But 3 is enough to do it. So the warrior will be removed and the workshop will be removed. And that will give Vagabond another 2 victory points. And Vagabond will have to damage 1 item as a result. Okay, there we go. Because of Adventurer, Vagabond can't battle more than once. So that will be the end of battle. And next up will be Special. So Vagabond has 1 unexhausted item left, so we'll exhaust that item to do the steal action. Take a random card from the enemy in your clearing with the most points there, the most pieces there. Well, this time there actually is an enemy in Vagabond's clearing. It's the Automated Alliance. So Vagabond will steal, quote unquote, a card from the Automated Alliance, which just means, because we're just dealing with bots with no hands, just that Vagabond gets a victory point. Okay. Vagabond has run out of items to use, so won't be able to do quest at the end of daylight actions. So we'll just move on to evening. There are some damaged items, so Vagabond will refresh 4 items. Next is repairing items. So Vagabond gets to repair 1 item, plus 1 because of Berserker. So both of the damaged items come back undamaged. Alright, that's the end of Vagabond's turn. It's the Irie's turn now. And we should notice that the Irie only have roosts in Fox clearings. The only 2 roosts on the board are in 12 and 8. That means if the order card is anything other than a bird or a fox, then the Irie won't be able to place a warrior during the recruit phase of the decree, and that means they'll fall into Turmoil once again. So if the order card is a mouse or a rabbit, it's Turmoil for the Irie. If it's a fox or a bird, then it will not be Turmoil. So what do you reckon? Will they manage to escape Turmoil this time? Well, the order card is a mouse. So that means the Irie will fall into Turmoil. Okay. Well, first things first. The order card does have an item on it, but that item is no longer available, so they can't craft it. Alright, so the card will come and go to the decree. Okay, and then the next bit is to resolve the decree with recruit first, and so that means that they'll try to place a warrior, because they have to do the mouse column first. Try to place a warrior in a mouse clearing with a roost. Again, there isn't one, so that means, because of nobility, they fall into Turmoil. They cannot place a warrior, so this trait makes them fall into Turmoil. However, it's not all bad. When they fall into Turmoil, they don't lose victory points. Instead, they score a victory point per bird card. Alright, so Turmoil, instead of humiliation, nobility, says they gain 1 victory point per bird card. So they gain 2 victory points, which puts them at 13, tied with the Alliance. That mouse card has now been purged from the decree, gone to the discard pile, and we just go immediately to evening. And again, I think that means that we don't do Relentless or Swoop. The Irie are in Turmoil here, so they're just going to rest, go immediately to evening. Score victory points according to the roost track, which is 1. Okay, so that brings them to 14 victory points, and that's the end of their turn. Okay, I'm going to end this video here. Here's where the victory points stand. The Vagabond is still pretty far ahead, 22 victory points now. But the other factions have managed to make a little bit of a dent in the difference here. So we have the Eyrie at 14 and the Alliance at 13, and the Marquise at 10. So the next video will almost certainly be the end of this game, and we'll see if the Vagabond can be stopped. If one of these factions could possibly catch up. The Eyrie have to find some way to not manage to fall into turmoil every turn. That means they've got to draw an order card that's either a fox or a bird. Although it's not all bad falling into turmoil for the Eyrie with nobility in play, because they actually do gain victory points. However, they're not doing much on the board. Especially they're not doing what they were doing earlier, which is really keeping the Alliance in check. The Alliance can really get out of hand if they're not kept in check. And right now, the Alliance has almost all their sympathy on the board. Once they get all their sympathy on the board, they can score a lot of victory points in a single turn. Because when they spread sympathy, they score 5 victory points if all of their sympathy tokens are on the board. So it's possible that the Alliance could really jump ahead, score a lot of victory points in their next turn. It's definitely a possibility. Okay, but we'll see what happens in the next video. Until then, bye.